Hello and welcome back to the Let Me Add to That podcast. My name is Elizabeth Graswich, Executive Director of Public Affairs and Communications at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. We are the largest regional education agency in the United States. We serve 80 school districts and nearly 2 million children. We are excited to use this platform to take a deep dive into the conversations surrounding our students and schools in LA County. Well, welcome to season 4 of Let Me Add to That podcast. This is going to be a little bit different for our viewers because they are going to be seeing us as well as hearing us. Normally, we've just been broadcast via audio, and today we are on YouTube as well. So thanks to both of you for joining us on this new podcast. Today, we are going to dive inside the world of charter schools and the vital role they play in expanding educational opportunities across Los Angeles County. We're joined by two of LACOE's experts on charter schools. We have Indra Ciccarelli, who is our Director 2 at the Charter School Office. Welcome, Indra.
Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Darryl Brown, who is a Coordinator 3, also in our Charter School Office. Welcome, Darryl.
Thank you.
So we really just want to start off with giving our listeners and viewers a lay of the land. You know, what are charter schools? How do we describe them? Kind of what is a basic understanding of them?
So here's what's important to understand. Charter schools are public schools. In effect, they're like their own mini district, complete with their own board of education. Really, when you use that term charter school, you're really saying 3 things. You're saying that there was a nonprofit board that was created that, in effect, is their board of education. That board developed a charter petition or a document that explains what their program is and what kind of school they are, what their vision and mission is, and that they submitted that document to an authorizer, which here in California is the county or a district. And that county or district looked at that document and authorized them to operate that school. But here's the catch. That's all you know are those 3 things. Charter schools can look vastly different from one another. So you know that there's a nonprofit board, but you don't know who's on that board. You don't know if there are additional governance structures above or below that board. You don't know how often that board meets. You know there's a document, but that document could describe any number of educational or operational programs. So you know those 3 things, and that's all you know. You don't know what the relationship is with that authorizer, with that school. You just know that there is an authorizer.
You know, I'm so glad you brought this up because the reason you're here today, it actually started with a conversation we had around charter schools and how there's so much misinformation about charter schools and how it's often challenging maybe for parents who are looking for different options, but to really understand, you know, what a charter school is and, you know, what to look for and how to be thinking about a charter school. And so, you know, we have these 3 basic factors, as you pointed out, but, you know, just based on that, a parent may not know a lot of information.
You know, and I would add to that, you know, when charter law was first created, there was this idea of an exchange of autonomy for accountability because charters have flexibility in their educational programs. And when a charter is approved, they are given a specific term, 5 years, which is different from a traditional school because at the end of the 5 years, that charter could be closed down, whereas a traditional school, we know, never really closes down. Charters are now under different regulations when it comes to renewal in that they are tiered. So you have a high tier, a middle tier, and a low tier charter, and there is regulation, there's statute within those bands as to, for example, a high tier charter, the presumption is that they will be approved based because of their dashboard being blues and greens, they're a high performing charter versus a low performing charter, the presumption is that they will not be approved unless they meet specific metrics. So some of the biggest differences is that accountability piece that charters have, and it's the exchange for the autonomy they get to create these unique programs. But there is definite accountability on the back end.
Yeah, and let me add to that because I think that accountability piece is a big part of it. But I think that parents or community members a lot of times think that the authorizer has a certain authority that it doesn't, right? An authorizer is really looking at that school to say, are they following their petition and are they following the law? And we don't have authority to step in and mess with their staffing or change their program. Their own Board of Education really has the authority over the day-to-day running of that school. We can step in as the authorizer if we feel like they're not following their petition or if we feel like they're not following the law. But unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do other than take that nuclear option of trying to close them, trying to non-renew them or revoke them. We can certainly try to build that relationship with the school and try to help them understand why it's in the best interest of students and their community to do the right thing, to follow best practice. But ultimately, I'm either sending them a really scary letter or I'm trying to shut them down. And there's not always a whole lot that I can do in between that.
Well, and you bring up such a good point in terms of county offices of education's roles in charter schools. I think a lot of parents or community members may think of it, a charter school is the charter school and the authorizing district or agency, in our case, in some cases. But, can you give an overview of what LACOE's role is related to charter schools?
So in terms of our oversight in LACOE, our oversight tends to be kind of the ceiling and not the floor. A lot of other authorizers will borrow our practices and frankly kind of marvel at the level of oversight that we provide for our charters. For instance, we have over 100 unique submission types that each school needs to submit. And the submissions cover the educational program, the fiscal piece, which we get support from BAS, who does monthly financial oversight for our charters, as well as the governance piece. We listen to all our charters board meetings and take notes. And if there's anything that comes up, we share that amongst the LACOE units that help us support our oversight. We have an assigned coordinator for each charter school, which is that liaison between LACOE. And we also hold bi-weekly charter school meetings, which was actually a product from COVID. During COVID, we needed to stay in touch with our schools, and so we started those. And after COVID, thank goodness, passed, we said, that's just a good practice. Let's keep that in place. And it gives us a place to, obviously, the accountability piece with our schools, but also to offer LACOE experts and to build the capacity in some instances of charter school staff in whatever area there may be a need. So, yeah, our oversight is a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot of it, more than probably the normal authorizer does, but it helps us to support the smaller authorizers.
Right. And just to give you a little larger context in terms of LACOE and what it is that we do here at the county, our office really has three main jobs. And that first job is really an appellate body. So there are 79 districts in our county. If a charter school is denied at any one of those districts, either on initial petition or on renewal, or a district decides to revoke that school, they have the right to appeal here to the county. So my office handles those appeals and those intakes and processes those, creates a report, a recommendation and a presentation that then goes to our board for our board to make that final decision. But that's only the first part of our job. And then the second part of our job is if our board does approve one of those non-renewed schools or denied petitions, then we become the direct oversight body for that school. So we currently oversee 23 schools directly. And that's what Darryl was really talking about, was those 23 schools that we directly oversee, and listening to every board meeting, looking at those 100 plus submissions. Those are for our 23 authorized schools. And then I'd say the third main job that we do really is technical support and help out to our districts, and really not just our districts. We support authorizers across the state and even across the country in terms of their practices.
Well, and one of the things that I think is really cool about our charter school program is, in all the conversations I engage in, it's like, you all really care about having quality schools for students. That's really the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we really try to make our decisions based on students and communities and what is in the best interest of those students and that community. And I really think we try to push that in all of the things that we do.
And I think that approval or denial cuts both ways. If we do see a charter program that we don't think will be of educational benefit for students, we also feel the responsibility to let the community know, or let the district know, let the families know there are other options out there. So student-centered, first and foremost, whether we're supporting a charter school or whether we think there are better options for students out there.
Well, and so charter schools, as we were talking about, they're really complex, right? They're very different in many ways. So when you try to think about and tell people about what is that baseline of what makes a good charter school, what are those base level things that you look for?
And you say base, and I actually might start at the top. And for me, it's governance, because we see that the undoing of a charter school, the majority of the time, has to do with poor governance. And so when we're listening to board meetings, are they evaluating the principal? Are they evaluating the executive director? Is there diverse experience on the board? A charter school will have a myriad of problems, from educational, it could be a facilities piece, it could be an HR piece. And so the more that your board has that diversity of experience, the better you will be at serving the charter school. And then lastly is fiscal responsibility. And again, I know this is governance. We're not talking about the educational program, but everything trickles down from either good governance or poor governance. And fiscal responsibility is probably the one place that we see the undoing of charter schools. I had a school that when they came to us, had probably one of the more unique charter petitions that we had seen. But we did identify some operational issues. They were approved, but the eventual undoing of the school, in my opinion, was that the board allowed the initial petitioner, the gentleman who started the school, to keep funding the program in face of LACOE notices, in face of our conversations with the executive director, and they just refused to hold him accountable. School eventually closed, and unfortunately that petitioner left with a pretty hefty bag of debt. And so for me, a good school starts with good governance at the top, and then everything else is possible.
Right. And ultimately that should lead to good outcomes for students, right? Ultimately, we want to see that that school is meeting its promise to the community. That charter petition is its promise, is its contract with the community. And is that school meeting that contract, meeting that promise, and doing what they said they were going to do? And do you have strong evidence of that? I understand that state testing may not be everything, and the school may feel like they are doing things above and beyond state testing, but show me objective evidence to that. Show me some sort of metric that really shows me the value added of your school to this community, and not just the value added for some kids, but the value added for the vast majority of your students that are attending your school.
And are there things that parents can look for to, ensure that a school has that, strong fiscal accountability, a good governance, and even, culture, climate, and strong academic program?
Yeah, I think there's a few things parents can look at. I'll give you some good rules of thumb, understanding that any rule of thumb we give you, there's always going to be an exception.
Sure.
Any charter school rule, there is always a charter school out there that is doing something different. But some good rules of thumb, I think, if you're a parent, you're going to want to first think about academics. Go to the dashboard, California dashboard, and you're looking for two things. The colors first, I think, is something that a lot of the parents can look at and see. And you can look at that school and say, is it mostly greens and blues, or is it mostly orange and red? Keep in mind, really what that's telling you is the trajectory of the school. It's not necessarily telling you how that school is performing exactly, but it is sort of giving you a trajectory. If the school is mostly green and blue, then their trajectory is up and they're doing better. If they're mostly red and orange, then that school kind of has a negative trajectory. The second thing you're looking at is what's called DFS, distance from standard. And it's a number that's on the dashboard right under the colors. It gives you a number. And there's a button on that dashboard that also shows you what the state is. And so you want to look at that number and then say, is it better or worse than the state? Is it better or worse than other schools in my neighborhood and community? And I think if you really want to do your homework as a parent, you're not just looking at that number in general, but you may be looking at that number in specific student groups that match your child. If I know my child is an English learner, an EL student, I'm going to look at that number and say, how is that school doing for English learners? Are they doing better than the state for English learners? Are they doing better than other schools in my community for English learners or not? So I think that academic piece is sort of the first thing I would look for. I think the next thing that as a parent that I would look for is really transparency. And this gets a little bit to the governance piece. If I look at their website, how easily can I find their board members? How easily can I see when their next board meeting is and where the board meeting is? Can I contact the board members? Can I see what the petition is? Can I see what the LCAP is? Can I see these documents, these important documents for the school? So how easily is it for me to access all of that and find those things available? I think is another big piece as a parent I would be looking at. And then I'd be looking at that board and saying, is that a diverse board? Does that board reflect my community? When I look at those board members and I look at where they're from and what their experience is and what they've done, do I trust that they're going to be making decisions that are in the best interest of my child?
And I would just add kind of more of a macro sense, understanding what a charter is in terms of renewal. We obviously get to renewal and we'll see hundreds of parents show up, and we often wonder how informed have they been throughout the charter term on where the school is in terms of renewal. You get to this point where, unfortunately, if there's a recommendation for denial and then parents come out and speak in support of the school, but to Indra's point, have they looked at the dashboard? Do they understand the true academic positioning of the school? And then the other thing I would add is just understanding the difference between an authorizer and a district office. We'll often get calls from parents who want us to take action for something that happened at the school. And Indra alluded to it earlier. There's an autonomy there where we kind of mirror the complaint process, but the school has the right to try to resolve that complaint at the site level and then at a higher, maybe regional or executive director level. And ultimately, parent can take their complaint to the board. But just understanding the nuance of what a charter school is in a broader sense, and so they're not caught blindsided at renewal or something happens and they call the authorizer expecting action and we can't take direct action, is something I would encourage every parent to be informed of if they enroll their student in a charter.
Yeah, it's something that I don't know that really parents necessarily understand, right? Like, so a traditional public school is far less likely to face school closure. I mean, it happens, but it's not something you think about as a parent that the school would be potentially closing. But for a charter, that is a possibility. And so really doing their homework in advance, because, once you get your students settled into a community, especially if you have multiple students, it's important that they're going to be around for a little bit. So it's really, something, parents, inform consumers, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of parents, I think one of the unique aspects of charters is they can require parent commitments to some degree, or can they not? Maybe
they cannot.
Okay, well, so there you go. I'm so glad you just corrected me. I always thought they could.
So they are a public school. They have to follow those public laws. Federal law says free and appropriate public education. They have to be providing a free education. They cannot require anything of a parent. They can request, just like a district could request for parent volunteers, for donations. They can certainly request those things, but those things need to be explicitly noted as optional and cannot have any effect on that child's access to the educational program or to that school. So there are lots of charters that may have some component written into their petition where they are hoping parents are going to take a certain active role based on the educational program that they're providing. But again, it needs to explicitly be optional. They cannot mandate or require a parent to do those things?
Great question. Then thanks for making sure that we understand that. One of the other things that is interesting in today's landscape, everyone's facing declining enrollment, right? School districts are, traditional schools are, charter schools are, public or private schools are as well. So that's kind of changing the way we all think about enrollment and how we kind of live in the ecosystem together. How is that impacting kind of the relationship between districts and charters? And is it changing, or, are you seeing anything on the horizon?
That's a great question. In its original inception, charters were supposed to be this place of public school innovation where the district could borrow best practices. The charter was free to experiment. And I think that, on the charter side, it's kind of two sides of this argument. On the charter side, there's been increased legislation that has probably moved the charter sector more away from the innovation and experimentation. And in my own mind, I'm often wondering, are the charters starting to look too much like a traditional school? Are we just replicating the traditional school? There's no uniqueness to it. Certainly understand the district's point. Loss of ADA is loss of ADA. When your kiddos leave out of your school and go to a charter, that impacts obviously your bottom line in terms of fiscal. If you have co-located charters, it impacts your facilities in terms of your offerings to the school, to the students that you enroll. And so, kind of the question, will we ever get back to, or will we fulfill the ultimate, what was the promise of charter schools? And honestly, I think it's kind of morphed into a different sector from what it originally was. My hope is that there are some commonalities, if we start with being student-centered, that will bring us to the table, both traditional public and charter schools, where we are able to share resources if we're co-located, where we are able to have regional access for mental health services, and we promote it together as a district and a charter school. Those are some of the things that I think could start to kind of mend the fence, if you will, to get us back. But I do think it starts with everybody sitting at the table and saying, are we, for this community, public or charter, doing what's best for kids? And if we're not, then how do we partner to fix that?
Really great point.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Let me add to that. The exponential growth of charter schools really has stopped. It's stabilized, right? You're not seeing that growth that you were 5-10 years ago. And so I think that's part of the conversation. And the optimist in me hopes that the charters and the districts will start to collaborate more to serve their students and their communities. The pessimist in me certainly fears that there's going to be more of infighting over actual ADA and students. Yeah. But I think the opportunity is there, given that you're not seeing that severe growth. So I think the charter schools are realizing that they need to rethink how they're growing and what they're doing. I think you're not seeing as many new schools, and the new schools that you are seeing are not as what we would call a mom and pop, right? You're seeing, I think, a trend towards the larger CMOs, right? The Magnolias, the Kips, the Green Dots, the Alliances, Aspires. So you're seeing more of those larger CMOs, which in effect become a district, but not geography-based. Hopefully, we can get to a point where those larger organizations are working together and collaborating together to be student-centered and community-centered.
Well, and one of the things I think is just like continuing to support our districts, right? And like how they can work with their charters and make sure that, that they are student-centered as well, and that they're all working together. Are there resources that you suggest for districts that are authorizers that, are trying to think through this process and make sure that they're authorizing quality programs?
Yes, I think there's a few really key resources for authorizers. The first agency I would speak about would be CASI, which is the California Support Initiative. There are a lot of resources available through CASI. So number one, CASI does a monthly charter chat where authorizers can come together and ask any questions they want and get answers from all of the experts and templates and resources and whatever it is they're looking for at that charter chat. They also do a quarterly training where we do specific trainings on specific topics, timely, based on new legislation, new trends, things that we see happening. They also have a mentorship program, so authorizers can sign up and get a mentor. They also have one-on-one technical support, and they will also come out and do on-site training for your staff, all free of charge under this grant. So an incredible resource, I think, for any authorizer who's looking for that. The second agency I would point to would be CCAP, which is the California Charter Authorizing Professionals, who also host a library of resources and templates, and they have an annual conference specifically for California authorizers. And they will also provide technical support and help as well. So that's another, I think, really strong resource for authorizers. And then finally, they can always reach out to us here at LACOE. They can reach out to their own county offices who are often connected. Here at LACOE, we are members of both CASI and CCAP, so we're kind of positioned to be able to help people and point them in the right direction.
Yeah, and we've gone out to local districts and done PD for their charter schools, particularly around the new renewal criteria that's come out.
Well, and we can't end the episode without sharing how many charters do we have here in LA County?
Total within the county, roughly 350.
Right, and of those we authorize.
We currently authorize 23.
Yeah, so it's a fairly large undertaking that you all do each and every day. I want to thank you both and your entire team. I have the privilege of working with you, of getting to kind of see behind the scenes. And, you truly do put students at the center of your decisions. I hear it all the time. I'm not sure everyone understands that or knows that. And so just wanting to give you a shout out for that, because I think that's really, really important to the work that you do. So thank you for joining me today and sharing more about our charter schools and how they operate, and want to thank everyone who's listening. And just for more information about charter schools, we have a lot of information on our website at www.lacoe.edu. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Please follow the Los Angeles County Office of Education on Instagram and YouTube at Los Angeles COE. That's Los Angeles COE. Or you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn at Los Angeles County Office of Education.